Good evening and welcome to the third or fourth edition now of COPS, which is me. I'm Donna Jones, Police and Crime Commissioner, and this is
Olivia, Pinkney, Chief Constable.
So this is the COPS stands for Commissioner's Oversight of Policing Services, and this is your hour with me as your Police Commissioner, with our Chief Constable for Hampshire and the Isle of Wight Police. It's your opportunity to put your questions to us, and we're going to update you on all things Hampshire and Isle of Wight crime and policing services. If you haven't joined us before, you can put your comments on the chat function underneath in either my page or the Hampshire Constabulary Facebook page, depending on which function you're in. Please do keep your comments coming through. And if you have a question in relation to a specific area, be it a traffic issue, if it's about Wickham, if it's about Basingstoke, please do tell us what area you are relating it to, so that Olivia is able to give you her answer very much tailored to your part of the county. So, without further ado, I'm going to put the first question to our Chief Constable, and thank you to those of you who did put your questions to us in advance of today as well. And the first question is, please can you update us on how we're getting on with the National Police Uplift numbers here in Hampshire and Isle of Wight?
Certainly. So really well is the short version. So our slice of the government's 20,000 officers is 498. With your encouragement and your funding, clearly we want to go beyond that. But we are absolutely on track to hit that number this autumn, in fact, this September. And whilst that's the numbers, which is great, I am as interested, as I'm sure you are, in the quality, the background, the breadth, the motivation, the skills of those new officers. And I meet all of them. I was with another 50 odd only yesterday on day one, hour 3.
Fantastic.
And the backgrounds that they have, the breadth of their previous experience before they join us in policing is just great. So the quality as well as the numbers, but certainly we're on track to hit the 498 by September.
And just so I can add some context into what a fantastic job Hampshire Constabulary and our Chief Constable is doing, we have, Hampshire Constabulary has until March next year to hit its uplift numbers, the government target of 498. We're going to do that 6 months early, and what that does then mean is we're able to go ahead and then deliver on my aspiration, which was 600 additional officers, so 102 more that I pledged to you last year. So Olivia, when will we hit the 600? What's the timescale for those?
And we're absolutely on track to hit that 600 as the challenge you set me by the end of March 2023. So exactly in this financial year, we'll hit that commitment.
Yeah. And just so you know, I mean, can you just sort of give people a quick overview on how long it takes an officer once they walk through the door on day one to them being fully 100% operational?
Yeah, so they walk in as they did yesterday, and they have 15 weeks in the classroom. So that's all the kind of real basics of their knowledge, their basic skills, and then they spend several months operational. So they learn in the community, going to real incidents and real investigations and working with real members of the public, real victims, but very much under the watchful eye of a coach who guides them through and develops their learning. There's a very strict, as you would expect, a very strict sort of criteria of things they need to do. And policing, being policing, that can ebb and flow in terms of the experiences that come their way. But then they are formally at the end of their first bit of training after 2 years, and then on the degree apprenticeship 3 years thereafter. So they become increasingly operationally capable over that time. But it is true that, brilliant though they all are, they do have to, policing is a people business. It's a complicated, nuanced business. So they have to learn that over time. But I'm seeing them now at 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. And you can really see them growing in confidence and competence. So yes, we do have a relatively inexperienced workforce, yes, but I'm really clear that they're developing well. And frankly, it's a lovely problem to have. I'd much rather have all these lovely new officers.
Right, that's fantastic. And they do go into local policing first, don't they? Response to patrol and neighbourhoods. So you will be seeing, these people are already now on our streets, the police visibility going up. And thank you to those of you who are noticing that, particularly in some more of our rural areas and urban areas who are telling us. Right, moving on then. So the next question, cost of living. We know the cost of living is biting. We know that, the cost of energy prices and oil, it's having a huge effect across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. Can you just give us a bit of a steer on, what you are doing and how that's affecting Hampshire Constabulary?
So there's a couple of things to answer that. You're absolutely right in terms of the cost of everything. We're all feeling it, aren't we, individually? But from our budget perspective, clearly the cost of everything we buy as an organisation is going up too. So our fuel for our vehicles, for our buildings, And I know it's your budget, Commissioner, but the estates, all of those prices are going up.
That is costing quite a bit extra, yes.
So we know that. In terms of what individual officers and staff have in the pocket and the impact that that's having on them individually, it is very real. We have really good, robust conversations with local federation, local unison, local superintendents association, who represent their members really, really well. But I'm also, I know that the pressures that's bringing to the people I lead, some of whom are very young in years and some of whom haven't been working for us very long. So I am concerned about it. We pay a police officer as much as we can according to regulations on the moment that they turn up.
And that's set by the Home Office, that's not set by myself or the Chief.
Yeah.
Just to caveat that one, for those that are moaning about police officer pay, we get it, we support you.
Yeah, absolutely. So we pay as much as we can by law on terms of salary, and any pay increases are set by the Home Secretary, again, nationally. And, we should hear that. I hope to hear that very, very soon, not in my gift.
Yeah.
But I'm also aware of the real cost of living that is in the area of the South East where we are. This is an expensive place for officers and staff to live and to bring up their families and to run their lives. So I'm really aware of it. We talk about it often. There are various choices we have, and we will, once we know the police officer pay award, we will discuss those. But of course, that money, and I want officers and staff to be paid well, but that money comes out of, at the moment, our overall policing budget. So it's like all other public services who find themselves in the same boat. There is, there's some weighing up to be done there.
Yeah. And I think, I've shared this information. It was shared around the budget process in February this year. We have budgeted 3.5%, but if the pay rise ends up being more than that, and we really hope it is, then of course that will be for the Home Office to, work with us and to make sure police officers have the adequate budget to pay for that. So that's something we're very mindful of.
Sorry, can I touch a little bit more on that?
Yeah,
Sorry, Commissioner. It's just there's an important difference for police officers, and they wouldn't, we have such fantastic commitment, and they always put the public first. And I've seen some extraordinary bravery only very recently. But of course, what police officers, they're not employees. They don't have the tools that we see lots and lots of other professions at the moment taking, their own kind of industrial action and things like that.
Cool.
Simply not available to police officers. They're not asking me for it either, I should hasten to add.
No.
But it is an important difference.
And actually, we do both have a very good relationship with the Police Federation for England and Wales, and particularly our reps here in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. Just one final thing on something that the Chief Constable touched on, which is the budget that comes under my department, really, my area, which is around the estates. The cost of living crisis, the energy bills, the utility bills, the impact on all of the buildings, 130 buildings in the police estate here in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, £1.5 million is what we're having to work towards for the next year. So, that could be an awful lot more police officers if we weren't covering that. So let's hope that gets sorted out quickly. Anyway, moving on with gusto, because we've got lots to get through and lots of key topics that I know that you want to put through to us. Thank you so much for putting your questions. Please do keep them coming through. Name and location if you can. That would really, really help. So, burglary. We had a question around what's happening with burglary rates across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. Is this a priority for Hampshire Police?
Of course it's a priority. Having your home, having someone come into your home is a truly vile invasion. And I know the impact, and I've spoken over the years to many, many victims of house burglary, and it has a profound impact. It feels a real violation. I really do get that and understand that. So, of course, it's something we take really, really seriously. We have a whole operation, it's called Operation Hawk, around house burglary. Clearly, we'd much rather it wasn't happening in the first place. So that relies upon really good intelligence, really good connection with, prisons and others about who's coming out and will be potentially burgling once more in our villages, towns and cities. So it relies on really great intelligence. It relies upon us getting ahead of the criminals. We have all sorts of ways that we do that lawfully, but with great wizardry, really, we do that, and we do that very proactively. But then, of course, should someone be burgled, we have, we put our crime scene investigators into that. We look at, whatever property searches that can be found to try and recover things, both for the victims who's had it stolen, but also for the forensic potential from that recovery as well. And we also work really closely with all of our neighbouring forces. So if a car is whizzing across some of our motorway networks, we have the automatic number plate recognition, ANPR, so we can often kind of track cars as they go, and we can get ahead of them where they're heading at the end of their journey. So we take it very seriously. We have some really great proactive investigators who do that. And of course, it's what we're trying to do, and it links very much to our wider investigation, is we've got Operation Falcon. I've just been this evening with some Operation Falcon investigators, and they are, when people come into custody, they are dealing with here and now, and they're dedicated to that rapid investigation that happens when someone comes into our cells. Things can go in lots of directions thereafter, but that's, again, another kind of layer of our commitment to really great investigation. There are wider challenges within court space, and we know about that, and again, that's in the news again this week, isn't it?
Yes,
so
last week,
can't control that, but we do what we can. We have great relationships with the Crown Prosecution Service, the court service. We work it through as best we can.
And there was a lot of scrutiny around that. Yes.
Yeah.
Just on that one, just for people that, this is a really new thing. It's like 2 weeks old or 10 days old now, Operation Falcon, and it's really going to help those of you that are victims of crime, because this is the Chief Constable's commitment with the Deputy Chief Constable, Ben Snuggs, to get these cases through the investigation team, through what in old money you would call CID, getting them through as quickly as possible into the court system and dealt with. So for those of you that are victims of crime, that may have waited longer than you thought you should have done in the past, things are going to get better, and we're hoping that we're going to be able to move things through really, really quickly. Right, so the last of our questions that came in advance, which is from Stephen Alton. How many officers carry tasers, and what specialisms are they in?
So taser we've been rolling out taser for a few years now, more widely. But very much the focus is on protecting the public, because in the most serious threat that someone poses to themselves or to others, clearly we want to try and stop that threat, but also do so in as safe as possible way as we can. So we have, at the moment, today's count, 865 trained taser officers within this constabulary. We have just over 3,200 at the moment, to give you a sense of scale. The vast majority, over 90% of them, are in operational frontline roles. Some others won't be because they're training it, or they might be on a particular maternity leave or whatever else. So over 90% are operationally frontline, and they're in all sorts of different roles. So they're in, of course, firearms officers have taser because they need a less lethal option.
Yes.
So do lots of response officers. So do lots of neighbourhood officers. So do lots of dog and roads policing officers. So the operational officers that you see, whatever their role and wherever they are, there are a number of taser officers. And to give you a real sense and reassurance, really, so first of all, it's bright yellow, so it doesn't look like a gun. It is bright yellow, is the first thing. And, in the last year, we used it 600 times. But when I say use it, that's usually just getting it out.
Pulling the red dot.
Yeah,
yes.
Just doing that.
Yes.
And we don't discharge it on nearly, of those 600, nearly 90% we don't fire it at all.
Yeah.
So it's the deterrent factor of this very obvious yellow thing coming out with the very positive direction that the officers are trained to give. So it really relies upon great verbal communication. They're trained to assess whether someone's really understanding that and listening to that and trying to de-escalate what is obviously a very tense situation. But the vast majority of times it's not used at all.
And I have to say, in the year that I've been in this role, and obviously the Chief Constable's officers are deploying and using the tasers all as, the use of as a preventative measure, which is brilliant. My part in this is paying for the upgrades and all those kind of things. And actually, we're just going through an upgrade. But actually, Hampshire Constabulary was one of the first forces. In fact, I think it might have been the first, but to have officers with tasers. So actually, Hampshire's always been a really forward-looking, fast-moving force that keeps up with technology, and I'm really pleased about that. And I have to say, some of the environments that these incredibly brave men, women, officers, PCSOs, and volunteers, police specials, are going into and taking themselves into, if they didn't have some form of protectionism, I know they've got their body armour, their staff vest, But actually, that taser is fantastic, as Olivia said. Doesn't even need to be deployed, but very good. Right, thank you for those of you sending your questions through. We are moving into questions now. So from Kerry Jenks, is there an upper age limit for joining the police force? A good question, actually.
It's a very good question.
Good question.
And I'm going to try. Okay, so I think, and I will, Kerry, I will correct this if I've got this wrong. My understanding is it's 60. The oldest officer, this is police officers, the oldest officer joining us that I have so far met is 51.
Okay.
In their first week. But we're subject to, normal pension age and all that kind of thing. Clearly, though, there are lots of roles that are not officer roles, staff and volunteers, as the Commissioner has said, and that's open to, and we welcome people of all ages. So if you're thinking of joining us, if that's behind your question, Kerry, that would be great.
Yeah, and in fact, actually, there is somebody in Hampshire Constabulary, for those of you that live near the Fareham area, called Paul, who works on the front desk, because that is very much open every day of the week at Fareham Police Station. He has been working in Hampshire Constabulary for over 50 years. He was a police officer. I think he got to the rank of sergeant or maybe inspector, and now he retired, taken his pension, loves the force so much, came back and works on the front desk in Fareham. He's a legend in South Hampshire policing. So if you're ever nearby and you need anything, pop in and say hi to Paul. But there are people who genuinely love serving the force, and long may that continue. Okay, so moving on. A comment, I'm probably going to give this one a bit of a go, actually, which is from Sue Orman, which is that, when you report stuff, nothing gets done. Well, actually, Chief Counsel will obviously come back on this, but I just want to say one thing about this. My police and crime plan, so if you haven't seen it, please Google, or not Google, www.morepolicesaferstreets.com. 8,000 of you gave me your really clear feedback. And one of the top things that came through to me, Sue, was that people's frustration about the 101 service. Actually, there is an enormous amount of stuff that goes on, but because the police have been in I don't think crisis management is the wrong word, but because of the austerity programme and not having enough police staff and police officers over the last few years, they have been so busy in coping with the responses to 101 and the 999, the 999 service, that perhaps one of the things that maybe could be improved is giving the feedback to you. So if you're reporting a car theft, you're reporting a number plate, you're reporting somebody, a hit and run, whatever it might be, so that it does happen, but we're going to make sure that happens more. Now, for me as Police Commissioner, I'm looking at ways, working with Catherine Akehurst, one of Olivia's senior officers, who's the Assistant Chief Constable for the Joint Operations Unit, which includes the call centre, on how we can potentially have an app for reporting crime, or how we can make that reporting online page a bit more user-friendly. It's not down to Hampshire Constabulary, it's set by the Home Office, it's a bit clunky and it's not very user-friendly. All of this stuff is going on behind the scenes, but if you have a look at my police and crime plan, the 9 key pledges at the front, and there's about 50 odd in total throughout the whole document, you can scroll through, there's videos with Olivia, myself, and with the other police officers talking about ASB and social behaviour, talking about knife crime, talking about how we're going to reduce burglary and all different sorts of things. Have a look at that, because it does talk about a review of the 101 service and making it easier for you to report crime, but most importantly, get feedback. So, anything you want to add on that?
just to add really to kind of myth bust around that. So, 101 answering time, we talk about every time, rightly so. We deal with hundreds of thousands of calls every year. Our normal average waiting time is about 3 minutes. It's a bit up now. It's about 3.5 minutes, and that's in the heat of summer, in the heat of the busyness, when we've got all our visitors, all our big events, which is great. So we have a fantastically busy world going on out there. And even then, this is non-emergency being answered by a public service in less than 4 minutes on average, often a whole lot quicker. Now, I would challenge you actually to find a non-emergency contact anywhere that matches that, because actually it's something that I am actually really proud of it.
Yeah, and one of the things that I do as Commissioner, and actually through the Chief Constable's Deputy Chief Constable, through the Force Performance Group, every single month we are checking, and every quarter we're looking at the length of time for 999 call answering, the length of time for 101, and actually I then look at that and compare that, as does the Chief Constable, to how we're rated against our other forces that are a similar size to us, but also across all police forces, all 43 police forces. And actually, we are one of the good ones in terms of our response rates to the 999 service and also our 101. It's come an awful long way. I do understand there is frustrations. And in terms of those calls being responded to out in terms of response and patrol, those 600 more officers, of course, going to make that a lot better. Okay, so moving on. Lynn Ford, can you tell me why, when people can give you clear evidence of a crime, i.e. car number plate or photos, do the police not follow these up?
The short answer is we do. It does depend on the depth of investigation of what's happened, and I think you'd expect that, Lynn. So you know, at one end, homicide, of course, we throw absolutely everything in the toolbox at that. You'd expect us to do that. You'd expect me as your Chief Constable to do that. And of course, there are crimes that, while still have harm, and I don't in any way rubbish that. You know, we do a more proportionate investigation around, and I think you would expect me to say that. What I would really encourage, we have some fantastic tools, and I know particularly now with, say, dash cams, you can upload directly to us. It's exactly what you were saying, Commissioner, about, you know, the different ways in through our contact centre, which deals with millions of contacts every year. Hand snap, it's called. If you look for that, if you've got dash cam or ring footage, you know, ring bell footage or anything like that, then that can be uploaded straight up, which no doubt suits you. It suits us, of course, and we can very quickly assess that for potential clues for who the offender is, or whether there might be forensic potential, that kind of thing. But we absolutely do. I do think it's a fair challenge about the loop back. So what we know is that, you know, when we get a number of calls in, say, for instance, particular residents in a street who are worried about a particular house and comings and goings, which would suggest, you know, drug dealing in that house, we do gather all that up. The district and the neighbourhood teams gather that up, and they do stuff with it. They do warrants. They look and work alongside housing about closing buildings, that kind of stuff. We are not as good as I would like in giving that feedback to all those individual people who've helped us build that jigsaw over time. So I think that's a really fair challenge.
Yeah, and like I say, the commitment is there. The technology is fantastic. There was a really brilliant piece of kit that we've got. It has the ability to give all that feedback back. It's just about getting the manpower to get that all working through. It's a pledge. It's in my police and crime plan. Chief is delivering that. We will get that, and we'll keep you updated. So we've got over 150 people watching. Olivia and I have got a big screen here that we're looking at right now. So 150 people watching. Thank you so much, and for all your great questions coming through. Really, really good. So it's now 22 minutes past 6. So we're a third of the way through. Keep ploughing through. We're going to get through your questions as quickly as we can, answer them as quickly as we can. First question, actually maybe one a little bit for me, but I will defer to the Chief as well. So from Jason Piggott, where does the police fee of our council tax go? So thank you to all of those of you who are paying your council tax, who paid it in one lump sum, or you're paying it over the next 10 months. That money is vital. The council tax police precept increase that I put through on the 1st of April raised an additional £9.8 million. That is paid. That is how I'm going towards paying for those extra 102 police officers for the Chief to then have in her operational, you know, with all of her staff, to make sure that we're getting to your burglaries, responding to your 999 calls, and answering the phone to the 101 quickly as well. So the council tax is spent, literally 90% of that money, probably even a bit more than that, 92% of that money is spent, as you would expect, on salaries. It's spent on either salaries for the staff that work for me, which is around 40 people that help me and my team in terms of commissioning victim services, in terms of oversight and scrutiny, in terms of making sure that we are delivering and looking after the police estate. All that stuff that I do, and then the bits the Chief does, of course, is PCSOs, police officers, and police staff. That is where, you know, thousands of people that are the salaries. But of course, there are other initiatives and many other things. And just following on from what Olivia Chief Constable just said, one of the other brilliant bits of technology that we're spending a little bit of money on, not a huge amount, it's actually quite a small amount in terms of the scheme of things, but if you are in a high street or you're in a pub and you see a fight happening, you phone 999. With your phone, the Hampshire controller can say to you, I'm sending you a text right now, please click on this text, and it will give me access to your camera on your phone, and right there from the control centre in Southampton, they can watch and see exactly what's going on. That can then be collected as evidence. It's called Good Sam. We are one of the first forces here piloting it and using it. Very much like the dash cam footage that you can update through, what's it called again, the dash cam footage? Hand Snap. So please download Hand Snap, send all your, if you're a motorbike driver or if you're a car driver, dash cam, please send it in. And we are also asking people, if you have a Ring doorbell, please go on the Hampshire Constabulary website and register that you have a Ring doorbell, because if there's ever a robbery, a burglary, a major incident in your area, the police can look on a database, know who's got Ring doorbells, and that helps speed things up. Okay, so Next question, Darren Stubbs. What's happening with moped and motorbike crime in Southampton? And of course, we've got the new bikes.
We have,
I'm very proud of this one, by the way.
We absolutely have new bikes. So it is something, and we have talked about it here on a number of occasions. So yes, the Commissioner's bought
3
new bikes.
2 arrived, one's on its way.
Excellent. And those are out and about. We've got people trained on them. We're very confident in using them. And in fact, very recently, we've had 2 particular cases. One where 1 was arrested, one where 4 were arrested, using those bikes, using the stop stick, which is the thing with the spikes in that takes the tyres out. And those people are going through the criminal justice system. So we are doing this, and we are confident, my officers are confident in using that technique, and importantly, there's doing that work in the moment, which they're absolutely doing, and I am grateful that we've got those new bikes. Then, once we know who they are, then that's where often the hard work also starts, depending on their age and so on. School, family, stopping their behaviour, getting them out of whatever, group they found themselves in, breaking that cycle, frankly, excuse the pun, but breaking that way of offending and changing the behaviour. That can be quite stubborn work. It can be, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but we are really, really determined to do it. And I have to say, I'm massively grateful, actually, in Southampton for the number of calls that we get, for the really constructive support we get from people in local communities, from our colleagues in the City Council particularly.
They are amazing.
They really do work really well with us. So, we've got the tools in the moment. Please do keep ringing us. Yeah. It's absolutely one of our priorities for the local neighbourhood teams. They do need the information. Ideally, of course, we catch them in the moment. But like everything, I would much prefer it wasn't happening in the first place. Yes. So that hard work.
Prevention is better than cure. Yeah. It really is. Yeah. And so through that, the 3 bikes I'm talking about, just for those of you that aren't aware, last October, Halloween time, in Shirley, in Redbridge, in the sort of western part of Southampton, there were some issues, and it was very much around youth ASBs and sort of large groups of teenagers, effectively. That then meant that through the chief and I, from 2 different pots, some money was spent to buy these 3 dirt bikes. So they are much more agile than a normal bike. And what was happening is they were being used in residential areas, alleyways and sort of sideways around houses and parks particularly, which meant the police on foot couldn't keep up. And of course, you can't take a car down an alleyway, a police car. So that's why they really needed these to be able to be more agile. And they are the tool of the roads policing unit. And the 2 specific areas we had problems with was the Thicket in Havant and then Western, so 3 housing estate areas in Western Southampton. So as I said to you before, previously on one of these COP sessions, and I've shared this on my own social media pages, delivery of the first one was April. We've now got, I think, 2 and the 3rd one's on its way, operational, officers being trained. We're going for that one. Okay, so moving on. We are getting to Stephen Swain. When are you reopening police officer only recruitment? I can see people are coming through saying that why their questions aren't being answered. We are going to get through them as quickly as possible. We'll keep our answers really quick. So, police officer recruitment. Why is it not only for police officers?
Police officer recruitment is open. So the degree apprenticeship scheme, which is our normal routine, is absolutely open. But so we are open for police community support officers. We're open for detention officers, who are the police staff who operate fantastically in our custody blocks, and also for contact centre staff. So those people who are taking those 101 calls and dealing with the online contact and the hand snap, and then also, of course, dealing with emergency deployments. So we are open for an awful lot of recruitment. We are a fantastic employer. Please have a look on our website.
And detectives as well. I'm very excited. There is a really brilliant detective scheme being run. So if you're somebody that's maybe 2nd or 3rd career and you fancy coming and doing some really specialist work, please have a look at the Hampshire Constabulary website, because there are 3 or 4 different direct entry for detectives currently on the go, 3 or 4 different intakes. Chris Stevens, I think that's probably kind of answered your question, same as Stephen Swain, around police officer recruitment and the degree apprenticeship. Do you feel that the degree apprenticeship is working?
I mean, it's you're conscious that you want to get to other questions. I am a massive fan of the degree apprenticeship. 2 reasons, really. One is the complexity of being a police officer deserves that recognition of a professional qualification after they've done that basic training. It is an extremely nuanced, extremely challenging and delicate role, and that deserves to be done in this modern age. Secondly, the quality of training that the new framework brings them. All training was police were operationally competent, and then the wider context of how we work and why we work and what we do and the transparency and all that stuff that is in the news, frankly, every day across the nation. This training delivers that. It is not just the what, it's the why and the how,
yes,
in a way that I believe is essential.
Yeah, that's absolutely key. And also to make sure that officers are all on a level playing field as well. So in terms of Angelique Shannon's question, such a pity that they don't bang up the guilty rather than use excuses, especially when women are the abuser. Tesco's in Burglary is a huge problem on the weekends, and all they do is get wound up by the boy racers and they do nothing. Right, let me just quantify what I think you mean there, Angelique. I think you're talking about shoplifters, female shoplifters in particular in Tesco. Actually, the big supermarkets are working really closely with us. I've met with someone from the Southern Cooperative today, Gareth Lewis, who is their operations director. We work very closely with him. The Chief's ASB team work very closely. There are dedicated town centre policing teams. But in terms of shoplifting and that harm, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, Tesco Basildon, I can take away on the specific, Angelique, and Donna, as you describe. Shoplifting, we do have to work and want to work with the business owners themselves. There is never an excuse for anyone who works in retail to be abused, to be frightened, to be harassed, to be assaulted at all. And I know that people who work in retail have suffered too much of that. So please be sure that absolutely we take really seriously. In terms of shoplifting itself as well, it really does depend on the frequency, the amount, the where, the harm it's causing, but we want to know about it because a bit like I was saying about building the picture of that drug dealing in a particular house and everyone telling us about it. Every report helps us build a picture, and actually we then work with, if there's a shop and they can do something really simple about moving this kind of product away from the door, then we will talk to them and insist actually that they do that. We need them to play their part in it. But equally, we can build a picture around, using all the evidence, even if someone's left, who was it, what have they got, how organised is it, what car did they go in, all of that stuff goes on. Now that may not be visible as you stand in the shop. And I think there is something about, and it's my responsibility actually to explain more about how we investigate things, because it isn't always there and then in the moment. A lot of it is, but we do an awful lot of following up and putting the pieces of the investigation together.
Yeah, and I think if you are stood in a shop like Tesco and you see somebody just brazenly walking out and you think that is outrageous, why is nothing being done? The shop staff are now advised by the shop owners, so by Tesco board, not to apprehend shoplifters because of the potential violence that can come off the back of that. Of course, they have a duty of care for their staff. But what will often happen is the Burglary policing team will look at the CCTV, the shop will send it in, and they will know, because they will have a cohort of regular shoplifters, male and female, they'll be able to see, and then that will get picked up. If they're on licence, they're being managed by probation, it gets fed back to their probation officer, it could be a breach, they then get resentenced, or their sentence gets made increased, or they are arrested and then brought through. So just because you don't see the immediate there and then, please be reassured there is stuff going on. And actually through my office, I work very closely with, we both work very closely with the probation service, and I'm actually now co-commissioning drug and alcohol services, because ultimately when people are shoplifting, very often they are alcoholics or they are drug addicts, whether that be class A, class B, and that's what's funding their insatiable appetite to want to shoplift all the time, because they need to fund that addiction and pay for the drugs, pay for the alcohol. Actually, by getting these people into proper treatment programs as part of a punishment order, could be in prison or in the community, that ultimately leads to them stopping shoplifting. Okay, moving on. So Paul Taylor has said, I suppose my question is a bit tame, but how does a speed watch coordinator maintain interest with the police approved team of volunteers? After a year or so, I struggle to get a team of 4 out, or wherever possible, 12.
Yeah. So Paul, first of all, thank you for being the coordinator. I'm a massive fan of Community Speed Watch. We work with you. We all have different tools in our toolkit, and ultimately this is about our communities, our roads being safe, people feeling safe to live and go about their business as pedestrians and elsewhere and also in terms of antisocial driving, not just speed. And sometimes, of course, they go hand in hand, but it is both. So first of all, thank you for doing it. If your team needs some infusing, then I'm really happy to pick up outside of this meeting, and we can get our volunteer coordinator to give you a shout and to work through that. I hasten. It could be, of course, that perhaps things are better. I don't know where you're from, so forgive me. But do get in touch outside of the meeting, and I'll ask our volunteer team to get in touch with you.
Yeah, and I funded, I think, half a dozen new speed watch equipment over the last year through the Safer Roads Policing Fund, because where people are issued with fines for speeding, the money, some of the money comes back to Hampshire Constable, and it can only be spent on something that is about making the roads safer and reducing speed and harm. So that's gone on some of that. Okay, moving on. Stanley Alden, how much time and money is spent on fighting online hate, so hate crimes?
Oh goodness, Stanley, I watched the BBC programme last night on AIDS, and just listening to it was voicing, just listening to the hate crime that AIDS sufferers were having. It was just, I lived through that. I've forgotten just how awful that was. Yeah. Anyway, we do take it really seriously. I haven't got the figures for you, Stanley, but whatever form of hate crime it is, we have dedicated people who's, they're police officers and staff, but they have additional skills, additional training around hate crime. We will always investigate them. We will look to work with you, and we're really aware that not everyone wants to come to the police straight away for all sorts of reasons. So there are also third-party reporting centres all over the place across the constabulary area where someone can go quietly talk to someone else who, if you don't want to come to the police, first of all, you can leave it there if you want to, and it can be left anonymously for us, but at least we know a picture of what's going on. But equally, someone in that third-party reporting centre can, buddy you effectively to come to us. I want to know about each and every one. And what I know is when there is, confusion around the world where something happens somewhere else in the country or in Europe or beyond, we see an immediate spike in hate crime. You can absolutely track that.
You think about COVID and that poor Chinese doctor from Southampton who had his face glassed.
Exactly that.
That was back in 2020. Yeah. It's absolutely terrible. And also, just to say that one of the Chief Constable's officers, Chief Inspector Scott Johnson, who is the District Commander for Basingstoke, for those of you that live in the north of the county, he and I were at a third-party reporting centre in Southampton last Thursday. So these are things that we are both connecting, meeting, reviewing all the time to make sure we've got the right level and the right geographical spread, because we do appreciate that sometimes picking up the phone to Hampshire Constabulary or going into a front desk of a police station to report something doesn't fit for everybody, and it's much easier done online or in an alternative charity or organisation such as Citizens Advice. But thank you for raising that.
And if I can very briefly, every area across the constabulary has a district inspector, a police inspector who is in charge of that patch. And
they're broadly on council boundaries, just so that you know.
Yeah, sorry. No, of course. Every single report of hate crime is personally reviewed by them, without fail. So that is to give you a sense of how seriously we take this. So please, I really want to know about it. I know it's massively underreported.
Okay, so Nick Gibbons says police need more funding. Yes, they do. And the courts need to get tougher. Yes. The police also need more protection from prosecution in certain circumstances. Can I answer the first part and then perhaps you do the prosecution part if that's okay? In terms of the courts getting tougher, well, obviously, magistrates and judges sentenced to what's called the Sentencing Guidelines Council, which is actually a document that sits under a minister within the Ministry of Justice. So judges and magistrates have a midpoint, a low point and a high point. So if there's a midpoint, if I, hit Olivia, the midpoint would be, if it was just me just doing that in the pub because I didn't like what she said, it would go in at midpoint. But if I did it with a clenched fist or with a glass in my hand, that would aggravate it up to the top point. If it was a slap of the hand, perhaps that may be a lower point, slightly more mitigation if I was having a mental health episode. But generally, the magistrates and judges have to sentence within the remit of the Sentencing Guidelines Council. They are being reviewed all the time, every week, every year. I'm really pleased to confirm that through the government, if you are now caught with a knife 2 or more times, it is a mandatory prison sentence. It's not an if, but, or maybe. It's a mandatory prison sentence, even if you don't brandish it. Secondly, child killers now will get life imprisonment, and it won't mean they can get out 50% of the way through on parole. It will mean that they will have to do the full amount of years in prison. The same if people kill an emergency services worker, a police officer, a fireman, firewoman, or an ambulance paramedic. They will get a whole life order, which means that there is no end date. It has to be applied for at some point. Plus also the new legislation that's come through for protesters, road protesters, those that are gluing themselves to roads and things like that. Again, new powers just came into force at the middle to end of May through the Police Crime Sentencing Courts Bill. So actually there is an awful lot going on to really make it tougher, particularly for the most dangerous, violent people that murder and sexual offences, rapists and child abusers. They will no longer be able to apply for parole to come out midway through. So that is for those that have been sentenced from May 2022 onwards. But over to you for
thank you for what's behind your question about protecting my officers and staff and volunteers. I'm really grateful for that. They are citizens in uniform. That is a really fundamental part of the British policing model, which is very, very different from other policing models around the globe. Please don't equate the two together. However, equally, those same officers, staff and volunteers do go into danger and to go into situations where absolutely everyone else rightly should not, and we want them to move away when our people are moving towards. Equally, those officers and staff and volunteers often have a tiny sliver of information to make their decisions on and make split-second decisions on, when even a few hours later, someone else will have many, much greater information. And that's where that kind of perfect hindsight can sometimes come in and can feel very difficult for officers and staff. But equally, we are the most accountable, the most transparent, I believe, of any public service. It is right that we should explain ourselves. We have profound powers to take someone's liberty, to go into your home, to look at your phone, to do all of those things with various legal frameworks. But the powers that we have, the language I always use with new officers and staff, is that they should hold them very, very lightly in their hands. They should be clear about what they're doing, why they're not doing something. They should be clear about their training, the legal framework they're operating in, and they should make their decisions accordingly. And I would always, in those circumstances, always back them, and I always have. But thank you for what's behind your question.
Yeah, it's a really important one, actually. Richard Waterman says the Empress Industrial Estate in Southampton continues to be plagued by street working prostitution and the waste left behind. Local businesses seem to be expected to have to accept this crime. When can we see meaningful enforcement to stop this criminal activity and the associated impacts? Well, this is a very sad situation.
Yeah, it is. So I was out on patrol actually in exactly Empress Industrial Area, probably about 6 weeks ago, maybe 8 weeks, something like that, with our PC Badams, whose job is to work to tackle the on-street sex work. It is very unusual actually to have an on-street sex working environment like Southampton, like that area does have. There aren't many left.
They're mostly online now. Yes,
it's still hideous and it's still violent and it's still awful. But where it happens online,
street walking.
But street walking, street sex work environment is very rare. I spoke with a number of the sex workers, spent time that evening, many hours with Sue. Spoke with some of the fantastic volunteers, my goodness, who work alongside night after night after night to do two things. First of all, to try and protect those street workers, give them the support that they need, keep them safe, health safety, personal safety, all of that kind of thing. But also to make sure that people know who's preying on them, who's sadly attacking them, and frankly to try and make it as hostile environment to stop people coming in and doing exactly what you're doing, because it is really oppressive. It is really frightening for people who live and work around there. I know that, the City Council know that, and as I say, it's a rare environment, but we are far from doing nothing. Actually, we have a fantastically knowledgeable officer in Sue, and the colleagues that she works alongside, both from the voluntary sector, who are funded by the City Council, as well as the City Council staff themselves.
And this is often in policing speak, whilst I'm a member of the public that represents you, and I'm not a professional police officer, but in policing circles, there's often they're often not victimless crimes. And actually, this is one where the street workers are actually often the victims and also the perpetrator of the crime, because of course prostitution we know is illegal. But if people understood the level of exploitation that's often behind this, with people controlling them and the drugs that are also involved as well, it is truly heartbreaking. And Hampshire Constabulary have had an appeal out now for a lady from that area who's been missing for 3 or 4 years now. So please have a look at the missing persons section of Hampshire Constabulary website, because actually there is so much more to this, perhaps one that we need a session all on its own on, because it really is a terrible situation. We get the point. I understand it's not nice for the Southampton area either. There is an awful lot of work going on. Okay, moving on. Thomas Law. Good evening, Donna and Chief Constable Olivia Pinkney. Whilst I reside in Borden, the following pertain to Hampshire and the Isle of Wight as a whole. Donna, you may recall we met recently and touched upon what the future of Hampshire firearms licensing looks like. And therefore, to the Chief Constable, what resource and/or process improvements are underway in firearms licensing to drive improvement in processing whilst maintaining public safety? Thank you.
Okay, firearms licensing. So we have talked about it before. I'm really happy that we should keep talking about it, because I know a lot of people are very interested. So first of all, if I separate anyone who needs a firearm for their business, and of course there are a lot of people in our rural areas particularly, you will have had your firearms grant and renewal, and that will have continued through. We did have a hiatus during the back end of COVID, because for very good reason, our doctors, our GPs were prioritising giving clinical care and were not prioritising sending us reports about whether someone was, frankly, mentally well enough to own a firearm. And we will not give one out. We will not give a firearms licence out without that assurance from the doctor that is in their best professional knowledge that person is a fit and proper person to have one. And you don't need me to explain why. Sadly, we keep seeing, don't we, around the world and in this country on occasion, ill people taking other people's lives, and of course sometimes their own. So that is something that I will not grant a firearms licence without. So we did have that hiatus, but we lifted that hiatus back on the 1st of April of this year, because the GPs were able to do it again. So that's great. That does mean, though, that there is a backlog. I know that we have given out, let me get you the figure, we have since April and June of this year, so April, 3 months, nearly 300 grant applications have gone through. So they're absolutely going through the system. I am looking to speed that up. I've got Rob France, one of the Assistant Chief Constables, on this. We were talking about it only today. We will get that waiting time down. We've brought in robotics. We brought in automation, not to make the risk assessment decision. Please don't think that. But absolutely, where it's a question of shifting data from an existing application to a renewal, that kind of gets pumped through automatically. People can self-serve on the portal, self-pay. So we're bringing in as much automation to that system as we can. But the queue at the moment is taking longer than I would like. I'm getting fortnightly updates from Rob, and I know that, and I'm reporting into Donna, because we need to get that queue down. But it is a mixture of a load of things that we had the hiatus because of the health reporting. Then, of course, like trying to get a passport, frankly, everyone came in at once and wants it quickly. I do think we should have been better at that. We should have been more ready for that. I accept that. But we are moving through that queue. And
one of the things that the Chief's done is put a bid forward for some additional funding to fund 2 extra people to go into the firearms licensing processing team, and that was signed off by me about 5 weeks ago. So actually that's all working through, and thank you for the question as well. Yes, it was good to talk to you about that. I think at it was a barn meeting. Anyway, I think where I saw you about 3 weeks ago. Okay, Gareth Champion says there must be 2 screens, one with real questions to avoid and the other one made up questions. Well, no, they're genuinely not made up questions. These are real questions. I'm giving people's names for genuine authenticity. But there are 2 screens. You're absolutely right, Gareth. So there's one that's through my page, Donna Jones, Police and Crime Commissioner. If you don't follow it, please go and follow it. And if you're on my page and you don't follow the Hampshire Constabulary one, then there are there. So questions are coming in from 2 areas. If anyone is wondering where the questions are coming from, we're getting through them as best we can. We've got just over 10 minutes left. It is 6:49, so we're going to carry on as quickly as we can. Nigel Pryor from the Meon Valley says, in terms of Neighbourhood Watch, Nigel, nice to see you, that residents raise concerns about visible deterrent, policing on foot and patrol vehicles, particularly at night. Great point, yeah. And the fact that there are 28 villages and towns, meaning manning levels therefore improving, but still basically it's not getting to where we need to get as quickly. So my second pledge in my police and crime plan, morepolicesaferstreets.com, is more visible policing. All very well and good having 600 more police over a 3-year period, but you need to be able to see them more to make you feel safer in your communities. And importantly, the point you're getting to, Nigel, I think, is to act as a deterrent. Also, me looking at the police estate with the Chief Constable and her team to say, right, where have we got gaps? Where do you need more neighbourhood policing bases? We're working with Hampshire Fire and Rescue. Can we use some of the retained police fire stations to be a police and fire station? Can we build some more front desks? One of the areas we're looking at that, and we're working on something at the moment, is in Petersfield and also in Alton. So we will be bringing more information back to you about that very quickly. Anything you want to add on that, Chief?
Yeah, just rural crime, rural patrolling, rural reassurance. Absolutely, and thank you for being a Neighbourhood Watch coordinator. Really beating heart of communities looking out for one another and keeping each other safe and connecting directly into us. So massively grateful to you for that and all your colleagues. The Commissioner's explained we do have a dedicated rural team, but they don't do that alone. They are, of course, work alongside every single neighbourhood response, police dog, roads policing officer, all of our patrolling people 24/7, 365. Of course, I'd rather the loads more, but I do absolutely, we have to cut our cloth accordingly. But it's about what they do, it's about their productivity. So there's all sorts of new things that have come on as well. So we've got, again, funded by the Commissioner. We've got those additional bikes that have been talked about. We have drone capability. We have, DISC, which is a way that people can automatically, thank you, that automatically give us information so we can get that straight away from people. We have, really great ways that people can get in touch with each other and kind of build that jigsaw that I talked about in other contexts as well. And the barn meetings that the Commissioner's talked about, they're happening all around the constabulary area, because I really want to hear firsthand, and my staff are always there, the people who are in that area, who know that community, are listening and are talking about what we can do, what they can do, what others can do to help in this space. So there's always more that we should do. There's been some fantastic successes in recent times, particularly, and I know it's not your area, but in the New Forest, some fantastic a dog owner from not controlling their dog amongst livestock. We prosecute that stuff.
Coursing, poaching.
We prosecute
so
that
much.
We absolutely do. And actually, please do, if you don't already, follow our Country Watch team online, because they're really good. Actually, lots of our teams are really good at promoting what they've done, but when they have made a good arrest and they have seized something, they do put it out there to try and explain what we are doing.
And if you do that online, a little plug for them, can you use what 3 words? Because they use that GPS grid map thing to locate if you've seen someone stealing something, if you've seen a suspicious vehicle driving around, if you've seen someone stealing red diesel, whatever it might be, please use the what 3 words. That really helps them. Okay, so we've got 7 minutes left. We'll try and get through another 2 or 3 questions as quickly as we can. Katie Gulliver, I'm a new police officer starting in September. What do you think is the biggest challenge facing policing in the coming years? That's definitely one for you, Chief.
Katie, that's a great question, and I look forward to meeting you in September, and we absolutely will. And that's exactly, when I was meeting the new officers yesterday in hour 3, a colleague asked exactly that same question, and it's really good, and I love the fact that new officers are thoughtful and inquisitive, and it's exactly the same, the kind of people that are coming in, really great quality people. So Katie, you've got a great career ahead of you. For me, I think when you come in as a new officer, I think one of the things, it's the breadth of the policing role is so broad. I mean, ultimately, we're here to fight crime, which means stop it in the first place, ideally, but if it has happened, be great at supporting victims, witnesses, and investigating it. And then we are also there always to protect people who need us. So it's the breadth of that. If you really unpick what that means, Katie, there's huge amounts in that. But just one specific, I think the complexity of, the data world. It was said in one of the challenges, all this stuff we have, which has so much data and access and information, and the reach of criminals and their ability to prey on other people from a distance is only going to increase as the years go by. So we all need to work really hard, policing, but all of us within our families and our communities, to kind of keep ourselves safe online as much as we think about keeping ourselves safe in the real world.
Yeah, thank you. Paula Colclough from Hearts talking about smaller stations, front desks and reporting crime. That is definitely something. Now there's more police officers coming into force. One of the things I'm doing is reviewing the police estate, like I just said, working with the fire brigade, but also looking to reopen front desks where we can, where there is a gap geographically for people to be able to report crime through front desks. That has simply been down to resourcing issues, but with more police officers and budgets increasing, we'll come back to that one. Chris Quirk, we've identified a drug dealer believed to be selling crack cocaine to teenagers. This has been reported, but it's still being dealt with. Why? That one, and perhaps the next one you can take together, which is Shyla Zay saying, after your last broadcast, we contacted you directly and you did respond. Thank you. Okay, you're welcome. Still to date, though, the person in question is on the streets. It looks like subject to some kind of restraining order, but the police have told us they've been to the address, they can't arrest or can't find him. He's still roaming the streets, whatever. So the chief will answer this one, but just to say, under data protection, there's an awful lot the police aren't going to be able to tell you as a third-party person, but the chief can obviously do that.
I mean, Chris and Sila, I will please take both of those offline and make sure that we come back to you on both of them. The second one, Sila, about the restraining order, it really, I don't know the case you're describing. I also don't know the nature of the restraining order that you're describing. So it might be that the police can only do a certain slice, and it may be that it relies on others to do something else. So I don't know that, but please, I will make sure that we follow up after this meeting and come back to you exactly on that.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. So from Davina, why do youths who nearly beat me to death and hospitalised me the day after Trans Day of Remembrance in 21, the DC appointed to the case was brilliant. However, they have walked away from this hate crime with no consequence as they are youths. They could not be named and shamed on Meridian or on Portsmouth News. I feel let down. Geopolitics. So the question there is, I guess, what the kind of response to that one is, and obviously with first-time offenders, if they were young people.
I mean, to be honest, first of all, I'm so sorry. That's just horrific, and
it really is sad to hear.
And thank you. And I'm not surprised, but thank you for saying that the detective constable who investigated your crime was brilliant. They do a great job. They take their job very seriously. They show compassion all the time, and believe me, I don't know that particular detective constable, but I'm sure that they are frustrated as well that whoever did that to you hasn't, from what you're saying, hasn't received any punishment. In terms of whether someone can be named in the media, what happens in court, Davina, if they're young, then there are really strict rules about that, and they're not anything that I can control. Of course, I think you know that, but it's and it's not for me to answer. But actually, that's all about, isn't it, balancing their protection as children versus the horrific action that they've clearly taken and that you've suffered. So I don't own that. I'm not making excuses for that, but that is the situation that you found yourself in, and I really hope you're recovering from that.
That's sad, yeah. And then two final questions, and we've got about a minute and a half left. Mike Barney Cott, I'm going to take your question, which is around antisocial behaviour, speeding on Portsdown Hill. Quite a bit going on. Roads Policing Unit, one of Olivia's inspectors, has been there, met with the council, met with the highways engineers, met with local councillors. They're looking at funding through their community infrastructure levy, some still monies, a couple of mobile cameras that could go up there in conjunction with the council. So I'll have to bring that back to you through our respective social media pages. Lewis Taylor, what about all these electric bikes that the kids are riding? Yeah, Lewis, I think we're about running out of time on that one, but That is another piece of work. DFT, Department for Transport, are currently consulting on how to issue guidance nationally on the private use of electric scooters. And Natalie Woodhouse, final one for you, Chief, if that's okay. Why, when we have video evidence and witnesses of a crime to my property, why is this not proceeded with, despite us knowing who did it and and they're known to the police?
Yeah, so Natalie, I understand your frustration. I don't know your particular case. Again, I can follow up and give you more detail, but my broad brush answer is, like I said, if it's, we do cut our cloth in terms of investigation according to, the nature of what's happened. Solvability, so the fact that there's evidence that you know who it is a really important factor in that. But it's not the only one, and I regret that. But it is the nature of policing and us having all the various responsibilities we have. It is no different from us than it is our hospitals having to make some really tough choices about where they put their clinical effort or where our schools put their effort to. It is the same. And whilst I know when that's you, that feels really hollow, I get that. But my responsibility is to try and balance all of our duties to keep our overall community safe. On your specific, I'm really happy to follow up, and it may not change the answer, but it may give you an explanation.
Some clarity, yeah. Right, we're at the end of the hour. 7 o'clock has come. It goes so quickly. We've had, I think, over the 2 pages, over the hour, probably upwards of about 500 individual people watching. We've got 100 people still watching now. Thank you so much for feeding your questions in, for your interest in what's going on in crime, criminal justice across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight Police. Really, really pleased to have had you with us this evening. And on both the Hampshire Constabulary and my Facebook pages, this will be saved. You can go back and watch this again if you want to, and we'll be posting the dates for you to join us again next time. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.